Okay, yesterday we started learning the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch about working on Erev Shabbos. Today we will continue with that. We'll begin with the Levush, some highlights of what he says. As we saw already yesterday in the Shulchan Aruch, we were learning if anyone does malacha, which we still have to completely define,
Yeah, it's not
what the de
complicated too.
Matya, what the definition of that is. You're working Erev Shabbos, min mincha l'mala. From mincha onwards, einu roya simin bracha l'olam. Never see simin bracha. So there's a discussion if this is referring to Mincha Gedola and Mincha Ketana, which is going to be a difference of around 12 o'clock versus 3 o'clock on a perfect day, 6 Lachik hours into the day versus 9. According to the Levush, though, one should be stringent because of Erev Shabbos and assume that this is referring to Mincha Gedola. So the Hagos over here on the Levush, we say it's from the Chidah. All this applies to Erev Yantif as well. This doesn't just apply to Shabbos, it also applies before Yantif. At the end of the Levush, he goes into getting a haircut. And he says, you get a haircut the entire day, even if the barber is Jewish. Because you're allowed to do it. Because it's for L'Sayrich Shabbos. You're getting the haircut for Shabbos. And even if you're taking money, even if you're getting paid to give the haircut, you're still allowed to do it. And the idea is Kedei Shelo Yikansu Yisraelim Kishem Nuval Shabbos. You don't want people going into Shabbos when they are looking unkempt. Most people are burdened the entire day with the preparations of Shabbos. They don't have time. They don't have time to get a haircut until already it's nighttime. It's closer to Shabbos. So therefore, since most people don't have the luxury of getting a haircut before 12 o'clock, 11:30 in the morning, therefore we allow you to get the haircut even later in the day. This is the logic of the Levush. Caf Hachaim has several interesting points that he makes. Caf Hachaim in Oz Beis over here says, even according to those who permit it, this is going on, working on Erev Shabbos, right? This is talking about Mikol Malkom Nira, the Aflam Matir in Yishluslik Mivoijoy Mikdesh Yuchel Lahachin Sarchi Shabbos. Sarch Lachin Erev Shabbos, the Yuchel Vlit for Lahach Begodim Kdesh Yuchel Lakabel Shabbos and Voijoy Bitaharu Begodim Noim. We said that you're allowed to do business. Yesterday. Magen Avram over here says Pragmat Yashar. You're allowed to do business Erev Shabbos. What exactly is this referring to? You could do business? How does that make sense? Caf Hachaim says no. That doesn't mean you can do business until right before Shabbos. What this means over here is you have to stop when it's still day in order that you could be involved with the preparations of Shabbos that are needed, right? So even though we said that it's permissible, you have to stop while it's still day. So you could prepare for the necessities of Shabbos, what's needed on Erev Shabbos, and you could be roichitz, you could get your Shabbos, Erev Shabbos shower, bath, maybe tovel in the mikvah if that's your custom. Change your clothing, you change into Shabbos clothing. You have to stop your business with ample time to properly prepare for Shabbos. Because if we said, which we're going to learn about more in the Simon, that you should decrease the amount that you learn, Erev Shabbos, the amount of Torah you learn, that certainly applies to business. Someone who believes in Hashem will be surrounded by kindness. This is the ha'ara of the Caf Hachaim. Important point that the Caf Hachaim is making. Yeah.
Now, what does that mean, like in terms of practicality, right? Let's say you're not a day wage, or you don't earn wages by the day. You don't earn either wages by the project, or you just wait for people to pay you,
That's
stuff
right.
like that. So, does that fit into pragmatia? Does that fit into malacha?
Yeah, self-employed would be probably pragmatia. We'll have to see. We'll have to see as we continue in the Mishnah Brura. Maybe we'll come back to that long Machasis Shekel in the Magen Avram to see exactly what the source of the Magen Avram is and what pragmatia means exactly. But this is a point. Whatever it is, whatever leniency gets applied, you got to stop also. That comes along. This is an intense story warning. Public service announcement for be careful. It's an intense story. There's a story with one woman who was she was using a needle on Erev Shabbos. She was like sewing or something, weaving something. She was involved with this on Erev Shabbos, and she wasn't involved with the preparations of Shabbos properly. Umesa. She died because of this. I told you, intense story warning. So someone appeared to her in a dream. Excuse me. One person who was alive dreamt, and this is where it really gets intense story warning. So a person saw in his dream, he dreamt that she was burning her eyes and hands, type of flax. Why would you burn your eyes and your hands with flax? That probably doesn't feel so good. Oh. She responded, I have to do this in Gehenna over here because I was involved with flax, with sewing Erev Shabbos, and I wasn't involved with preparing for the meal of Shabbos.
It's intense.
Holy smokes or holy fire?
Smoke is from the fire.
Yep. Sefer Chassidim. Knesset HaGedolah quotes this in the Hagos and the Torah. And he writes, Afogav the Isser Malocha Be'erev Shabbos Hum Minim Elul. Oh, but the prohibition of working, according to those who are stringent, are only from Mincha and onwards. So why then would it be a problem the entire day? And she's burning her eyes and her hands. What's the prat over there? Hainu b'mi shekvar heichin sarich Shabbos. This is talking about someone already prepared for the needs of Shabbos. It's talking about someone already prepared for the needs of Shabbos. Aval isha azois b'shvil hamalacha loy haisa machenes sarich Shabbos kitiknin. But this woman over here, because of her work, so she didn't prepare for Shabbos properly. Which means that when we say you're not allowed to work from Mincha time and onwards, but let's assume that's referring to the earlier Mincha Gedolah. That's only talking about someone who already prepared for Shabbos needs. So now the prohibition only kicks in later. However, this woman, she didn't even prepare her Shabbos needs at all properly because of the work that she was doing. And therefore she was punished even for the work that she did before halachic midday. Pretty intense statement over there.
Wow. So we're saying she was working before Chatzos.
That's right.
But before 9:30, before Mincha Gedola,
Yeah, that's right.
because she wasn't going to prepare, she wasn't ready yet, or she wasn't preparing.
That's right. She's held accountable even for
So
that.
the husband's okay though.
Yeah, he wasn't doing nothing. Who knows? Who knows if she had a husband?
Right. No,
Relevant.
well, it is relevant in terms of the husband that he can continue working on it.
Yeah, okay. It says over here, in the place where there's a custom not to even work from the morning time. Looking at the Rabbah, he relates that there's a whole discussion about this. Some say it's considered a custom and it's prohibited, even to work before halachic midday. Others disagree. And they say, no, it's fine. Therefore, someone who accustomed himself not to work even from the morning on Erev Shabbos, that's his custom. I'm not going to work at all on Shabbos. And he wants to retract, for whatever reason it is. He wants to go back on that. And he wants to say, you know what? I'm going to start working in the morning on Erev Shabbos. He needs a Tardas Nedarim. He has to. It's almost like he made a vow and he needs to have that annulled in order to fulfill the opinions of those who are stringent.
So now he's going to that there's a minhag that people for this is Magush Nagush. Oh, that's a minhag. Right, okay.
This
Shabbos.
is even before
Maybe
Halachic
before.
Midday. This sheds light on those who don't have the custom at all to work on Erev Shabbos. Comes from this. Lastly, person prepared in the morning to take a loan in honor of Shabbos with the intention that the money that he would make by working on Erev Shabbos, he could repay that loan. He's allowed to work the entire day then, Ben Ish Chai says. So this is similar to the leniency that we saw yesterday in the Taz. The Taz discussed over here, it's in the first file rather. When they changed the rules on the Otzer, I can make more than 3 pages on a PDF of the Friedman Shulchan Aruch. Very unhappy about that. Used to have good old-fashioned 8 pages. Anyways, the Taz said, don't mind my rants, if the guy was poor and he needs to work Erev Shabbos because he needs the money for Shabbos expenses, that's permissible to work the whole day. So this is saying a step further, if you were taking a loan with the intention that you were going to make more, so then it's going to be permissible. So then it's going to be fine. So that's what the Caf Hachaim is saying. The last Caf Hachaim says, if someone prepared the needs of Shabbos from Thursday, now there's nothing for him to do on Erev Shabbos. Everything's already taken care of. Everything's prepared. There's nothing for him to prepare
Oh,
on Friday. Everything's already prepared. He did everything. So you could sit and learn the entire day now. You can learn Torah the whole day. Because it's going on the remote, was talking about you decrease the amount of Torah that you learn. It's fine. You could do it the whole day. However, it appears that since the pasuk is concerned about doing it specifically on
Yom Shishi.
Friday, since we learned Siman Reish Nun that the main preparations of Shabbos should preferably be performed specifically on Erev Shabbos, Friday. Therefore, someone who prepares everything Thursday didn't fulfill the mitzvah properly. This is obviously referring to when you had no other option. If you have no other option, and the only way for you to prepare for Shabbos properly is by doing it on Thursday, because you're not going to be around Friday, you're going to be working the whole day, whatever it is. you could do it Thursday. But someone who has the option and ability to be involved with all the preparations for Shabbos on Friday should do it all on Friday and not Thursday. Important point to add on. And now we're going to learn the mother of all leniencies before we start the Mishnah Brew. And there are multiple leniencies over here. But remember, these are only leniencies. It's not preferable. This is trying to determine why exactly many people do in fact go to work. Because we already see you won't see a sign of a blessing if you work after mincha. Let's say it's referring to mincha katana, fine. You have up until 5:30 in the summertime. By the way, I want to just pose the shaila. I don't know the answer right now because I didn't finish researching, and we together didn't learn this entire siman yet, all the way down. But when we say mincha katana, right? So mincha katana, let's pull it up on the sheet again over here. When we say mincha katana, so there's a set time of mincha katana. That time is fixed. So this week is Parshas Chukas. Mincha katana this week is 5:21. That's a fixed time. Is this time, according to those who say that this line of if you work after the time of mincha, you won't see a bracha, and some explain it's mincha katana as opposed to mincha gedola. Others say it's mincha gedola, 138. Right? You definitely have, you could work till 138. Right? But those who are more lenient and say it's 5:21, is that assuming that you're going to be making Shabbos at 8:11 and a later Shabbos? By the way, one of the latest of the year, 8:11. Yeah, the latest.
This is it.
Yeah, the last one, the last two, and this one is the latest.
Oh,
Oh yeah, it's going to be easy now. The next Shabbos, 3 minutes earlier. But is that assuming that you're going to make a later Shabbos and now you could bank on this 5:21 time? Or is that even if you're going to be making an earlier Shabbos? I would assume it's referring to later Shabbos. Because if it's earlier, so then the whole logic is that you have, ample time and everything. So I don't know. It could very well be if you're making a regular Shabbos. I don't even want to call it a later Shabbos. It's called the regular Shabbos. Regular Shabbos versus early Shabbos. But I just call it later just because that's how people talk. But I think there's what to think about on that. I just thought of the Shiloh right now. But look, this idea of the Aruch Hashulchan, he's going to present a few leniencies. We have to remember these are leniencies. It's not preferable to do it. So a lot of people do it. So he's going to try to figure out why people work very late and close to Shabbos. That's what we're going to try to figure out. And then also, there's a few stories about Rashi and the Rama and about how important it is, if I'm not mistaken. I have to find them in my certain farm that I have and everything about the importance of not working. I want to share those stories. Yeah.
I'm sorry if I forgot, but
Yeah.
did the tour have a makar for his statement?
Oh, if you work Erev Shabbos,
Yeah.
you won't see Simon Bracha? I feel like it's in the Gemara in Psachim. Oh,
That was in the
oh,
house.
welcome aboard. Better late than never.
Early barbecue.
Early barbecue, early 4th of July fireworks. All right. Well, you're marked on the list as tardy. Don't worry. You're allowed to be tardy once a year, so you're off the hook. Okay. So this is
I had an alarm for that regular minion. I have an alarm. It's like completely. I'm not in work today, so I came back and I had an alarm for 9:10, and then I set it for 9:14. And 9:10 we heard, and then I don't know what happened to 9:14. I was like, I'm in a completely different zone right now. Sorry.
oh my goodness. All right. Well, you're never off from working with Torah. You always got more Torah Hakadosh to learn. I think it's a Gemara
Yeah.
Psachim Nunam Beis.
I've seen that over here is cool.
What? Yeah, I think it's
This
a.
Gemara says that they make the nachlik for their Pesach and
Where's this? No,
Shabbos.
no, no, it's not in there. It's not in. It's
Not
not in
that.
Psachim. No, it's not there. I know that stuff. I think it's over here in Psachim on Nunam Beis. That's why I think it's gonna come down. It's talking about the sugis over there in the Parak Makom Shenahagu. Talking about working our Pesach. It's brought over there. That's where it's brought. It's Chazal.
So
Pretty sure.
because it says right, I forgot the Mishamtim Nosim Melech were Pesach when we but they're not Mishamtim Nosim Melech. So I guess because it ain't Mishamtim, so there is something wrong with it.
Yeah, there's no nidui on it, but you won't see some in bracha. Look, this isn't a full-fledged prohibition if you work. This is just you're not going to see any blessing from that work. But it's not preferable to do.
Then again, we don't know if that's well according to the Torah, that's Min Mincha Lamala from Mincha Gedola.
Right.
Seeing other opinions, well, I guess we can tell some nice we got that.
Yeah, well, we saw the Levush. The Levush himself was stringent for that. That's what we saw in the Levush.
Mhm.
We saw Shulchan Aruch was going back and forth first. And he didn't really say anything. Right? He said some say it's Mincha Gedola. Some say it's Mincha Katana. And we saw the Taz wanted to go like Rashi, who says it was the later Mincha, the Mincha Katana. And then the Taz just said, by the way, if you rely on this Rashi that it's later, you're not going to lose out because it's it's just you're not going to see a blessing. But it's not a prohibition, the Taz said. So we're going to see how the Mishnah Berurah goes and everyone like that. But let's just see the Aruch Hashulchan first because this won't take as much time as going through the Mishnah Berurah. This is insightful, but you have to be careful. Just trying to fish for loopholes. First of all, he starts off being lenient, like the Taz and the Bach and many others. Magen Avram, who's saying this is talking about Mincha Ketana. Then he says, look, if you've got a wife around who's preparing the necessities of Shabbos, keep learning Torah. Right? When it talks about, when we're learning over here about decrease your learning, when we're talking about that over here, that you should decrease your learning on Erev Shabbos, you got to think twice about that nowadays. If people are going to go out and work until right before Shabbos, then you should be working with Torah. It's a Caf Hachaim for Torah. The world was created for Torah. And then he says, nowadays, why do so many people work until right before Shabbos? What is going on? The mamish working till right before Shabbos. Where does that come from? And no one's protesting them. You don't see rabbis getting up and say, guys, come on, stop working. What's going on over here? Aruch Hashulchan's first potential answer, explanation to this, people need money nowadays. And everything is more expensive. Everything costs. People have to work. A real job, so to say, as an employee, requires someone working 5 days a week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So therefore, people got to work. Potential leniency number 2 says in Chayshin Mishpat, Simin Shin Lamed Aleph and Hilchos Schirus over there. A poyal, an employee, is oisem alachto etzel balabayis. An employee has to work by his employer until sunset. And he has to go close to Shabbos over there. He has to keep working, right? He needs enough time that now he could roast a fish, cook a little fish. That's how much time he needs in between. It's based on a Yerushalmi. So you see that this idea of stopping working, that's only by the employer, not the employee. Most employers nowadays have a lot of employees who are doing the work. Third potential reason. A lot of times when people are working, they're not starting a new project. They're completing something that they previously started doing already, which could therefore be more lenient. Potential leniency number 4. The whole idea why you need to stop working is because you need to prepare for Shabbos. Nowadays, the women are really preparing and they're running the show most of the time anyways. On the contrary, if you try to get in the kitchen, they'll say, get out of the kitchen. So therefore, That's why you could keep working. You know, you still could goof. Oh, that's it. Like the Aruch Hashulchan said earlier in Reish Nun, which you should still do something. But so these are the four potential leniencies of where the Aruch Hashulchan is coming from. Look, these are potential leniencies that he's fishing for over here. You know, that's what he's trying to figure out. That's what he's trying to discover. So next time, Mitzvah Hashem, we're going to start the Mishnah Brew.